There are way too many Kenyans who don't know the meaning of the word hate speech. Indeed, any discussion of the tribal problems we have in the country is hate speech. Any discussion of the tribal problems we have in the country is incitement. So how are we ever going to be able to solve our problems if we don't even understand them and where they came from? How? Now, it's very important for all of us, whatever side of the political divide we fall into, to appreciate one very important fact. And that fact is, any discussion that sorts out our tribal problems is of no interest to the political class. Okay? In fact, people talking understanding and unity in Kenya so that each tribe stays together in peace is a threat to our political class. That is something I want you to understand and to understand completely. Why? The answer should be very obvious and you should already know the answer. But let me just repeat it for clarity. Yeah? The reason is, the day all Kenyans will shun tribalism and understand each other is the day our political class are finished. Because they have no way of campaigning, they have no issues. That is the day they'll get arrested and thrown into jail. Because we'll open our eyes, see corruption irrespective of tribe. Because when you criticize one politician because of his corruption, so you know what they normally do? They fall back on their tribe. Oh, our tribe is getting finished. It's as if the money they stole, they've divided with their tribe. Well, that is not the case, we know that. Provoking tribal feelings has been their way of defending themselves. Just like it was during the colonial times, when it was not in the interest of the colonial government for the Africans to be united, even now, it is not in the interest of the political class, those who rule us, our leaders, it is not in their interests for there to be unity amongst the tribes of Kenyans. Yeah? That we must understand. And this is why any discussion of the problems you have which are tribal is very quick to be labeled hate speech or you're inciting people, you know. And yet it is very clear that unless we discuss these issues, unless we know where they came from, unless we interrogate these issues, how are we going to be able to sort them out? Do you sort out an issue by avoiding it? Do you sort out an issue by burying your head in the sand like an ostrich? Yeah? You know, the ostrich is a very funny animal. When the fire is coming, it assumes that if it buries its head in the sand and it can't see fire, you can't see the fire, therefore no fire. Yeah? You can't see tribalism, therefore no tribalism. But the minute you see tribalism, it is there. Gosh. Anyway, in this particular recording, I want to deal with a very sensitive issue. And it is an issue which the more, if as many Kenyans as possible understand it, it could be the beginning of a new Kenya. It could be the beginning of an understanding which has been elusive for a long time. Yeah? And it should be a pretty obvious thing, but just bear with me. Let me get right down to it. I want to focus on our Kikuyu brethren, our Kikuyu brothers and sisters. Now I want us to look at this issue with a lot of maturity. I want us to put our feelings aside for a minute and put our brains in gear and use the beautiful brains God gave us to be able to think and to reason. Okay? Now, you'll have noticed that our Kikuyu brothers and sisters are very sensitive to any attack on one of their politicians, especially by somebody, even by people within their own community. Yeah? They see it as an attack on the entire community. Yeah? I'll give you a simple example. If, the people have been attacking retired President Moi for many years, well, recently they haven't, but immediately retired, there are a lot of attacks, immediately left power, there are a lot of attacks on President Daniel Arap Moi, and, about his 24 years rule, a lot of people are calling it the misrule, the Moi misrule, or the Moi era, as Kibaki used to like call it, era as in mistake, yeah? And you'll have noticed we did not have any Kalenjins coming up and saying, oh, you're attacking the community, yeah? But immediately you attack a prominent leader from the House of Mumbi, let's say like President Uhuru Kenyatta, or even the other leaders, and you're from another community, immediately it's labeled, they're very quick to say you're attacking the entire community, yeah? Now there's a reason for this, and that reason is historical. Okay? It's very important that we understand where our brothers, our sisters are coming from, and therefore it gives us a bit of, so that we can give them a bit of leeway, understand them better. When you understand your neighbor better, your relationship with that neighbor is going to improve. When you don't understand them and when you have no reason to, when you have no interest in understanding them, then things can only get worse. You know, it's like we're all in one family. Yeah, when you're in a family and you have a brother who behaves in a certain way or a sister who behaves in a certain way, you're not just going to ignore them and say, you know, that's it, you're no longer my brother or my sister. No. You're going to try and understand them better so that you have a good relationship. And they too also have the responsibility for understanding you better. Yeah. But it would be a good idea for the wiser brother, if you think you're wiser, for the wiser brother or sister to start by understanding their sibling. And then vice versa will happen. Yeah. So I want us to start by understanding our Kikuyu brothers and sisters. Okay. In the period before independence, 1930s, 40s, and 50s, which community suffered the most in Kenya? It was the Kikuyu. And why did they suffer? They suffered because a lot of the prime land which the Mzungus took over, a lot of the prime land which the colonialists grabbed, belonged to the Kikuyu community. The Kikuyu, of course, resisted, and that's why they're seen as the community that was at the forefront of fighting for independence. They were actually fighting to have their land back. And of course, by having their land back, their victory would also be our victory, because the rest of us would benefit from it. Okay, that is a fact. Right. Now, the Mau Mau rebellion and the way it was put down is one of the saddest chapters in the history of our nation. It's also one of the saddest chapters, especially in the history of the Kikuyus, yeah, the Kikuyu community. It is estimated, well, officially we are told that about 70,000 Kikuyu civilians were put into brutal detention camps, yeah, just on suspicion of providing material support to the Mau Mau. Just suspicion, okay? Many were held in very bad conditions, concentration camps and so on. Bottom line, they suffered, yeah? Now, there are some researchers who I tend to believe who say actually the true number of Kikuyus who were held or detained during that Mau Mau period was closer to 1 million. That's a big figure. Yeah, that's a big figure of Kenyans to suffer. Okay. Now, these brethren, brothers and sisters of ours, because also women are involved, interestingly, some women, a few women are involved, went through a lot of inhuman treatment. They went through a lot of human rights violations. There was a lot of bad things done to these people. Actually, the bottom line is that the colonial government saw the Kikuyus as a threat to them, yeah, a serious threat to them, for various reasons which we shall not go into here, because this is not a history lesson, okay? Because I just want to get my point as quickly as possible without boring you with the history. What happens when a community is persecuted? Naturally, you become defensive. And when you become defensive, you become very sensitive to any attack on the community, to any attack on any individual of the community. Now, in the history of the Kikuyu, there was a very brief period over which the Kikuyu could actually breathe and relax. And this was during the tenure of President Jomo Kenyatta. Yeah? Not quite relaxed, but I'll come to that in a minute. But at least they were able to feel less persecuted, okay, with President Jomo Kenyatta in power. And that brief period was only 15 short years. Compare that to the years of persecution, yeah? Now, during the Jomo Kenyatta presidency, there was another big problem that came up on the community. Funds were given to the government in order to buy back land which the colonialists had grabbed and redistributed back to the true owners, you know, and most of those were Kikuyus. Now, this was not done, yeah? Instead, what was done, the funds were used to buy back the land, and the land was distributed only to a few key members of the Jomo Kenyatta government. And instead, to settle these other Kikuyus who had not been able to receive their land back, many of them were resettled in the Rift Valley. Okay? And the person who was assisted Jomo Kenyatta a lot in doing that was, of course, retired President Daniel Arap Moi, who at that time was the vice president. Of course, the Kikuyu are very hardworking, they're very industrious, they settled in many other parts of the country, and they prospered. And indeed, the truth, because it's good to speak the truth, they helped to get the first pace of development of the country, because they brought development to many areas in the country. Yeah, they did not take the development as handouts, but they took the development in terms of taking their industry, their business acumen, their skills to other communities who were able to see, and individuals copied and prospered. Okay, so they made a big contribution to a country which cannot be ignored. They're part and parcel of Kenya, and they deserve to be recognized as such. Okay, if truth be told, they deserve to be recognized as such. Now, the only problem that has come in is that our political class, some of whom know the history of the Kikuyu very well, have used this for their own selfish political ends. For instance, when Mwai Kibaki in 2007 saw that things were going very badly for him, he was advised to fall back on the community. Now, the interesting thing is that Mwai Kibaki came from Nyeri area, yeah? And we know during the Kenyatta regime, the only people who benefited, his close circle, was Kiambu Kikuyus. And in fact, this was an injustice to the Kikuyu community, in that a lot of the people who had fought very violently against the colonial government were actually Kikuyus from Nyeri, yeah? And most of the Kikuyus from Kiambu became home guards, they were collaborators, they were really working with the Mzungu, yeah? But when independence came, guess who benefited? The ones who benefited were mostly the Kikuyus from Kiambu. Now, it's also unfair because the Kikuyus from Kiambu are the ones who mostly had an education, yeah? Because of their collaboration with the Mzungu, most of them got an education, most of them were able to read and write, yeah? Some of them were able to do much more than that. Independent Kenya needed schooled people as much as possible, and therefore they were able to get the best jobs, they were able to get the best opportunities in the new government. But it was also more than that. There was a rivalry actually between the Kikuyu Kiambu, the Kikuyus from Kiambu and the Kikuyus from Nyeri. And this is why during the Kenyatta presidency, oaths were taken. An oath was taken that the presidency would never cross the River Chania. Yeah? Crossing the River Chania would be crossing over to the Nyeri Kikuyus. Yeah? There was actually such an oath taken. Anyway, fast forward to 2007, when Mwai Kibaki took over and saw there was a lot of opposition to his government, some of his advisors told him to play the tribal card, yeah, and unite all Kikuyus, Kiambu, Nyeri, and so on, against a common enemy. Yes, and this was interesting because this was achieved very easily, because we've already learned that the Kikuyus have been persecuted for a long time. Being persecuted was kind of like in their DNA, because you don't get persecuted for all those decades and then it fails to enter your DNA. Yeah, that's a fact. Okay, so it was very easy to show the Kikuyus that everybody is against you, everybody is against us, and therefore support me so that we thwart these other people against us, and I win the election and get elected and I become president. That's really what Kibaki's message was to the community. And of course the community bought it hook, line and sinker. Now my big problem is what has happened today. Today where we sit, we have a situation in the country where there's a lot of hatred towards this community. Yeah? A lot of people say a lot of the injustices that were done in the past were done by the Kikuyu. That's rubbish. It's rubbish because Jomo Kenyatta is not the entire Kikuyu community. Mwai Kibaki is not the entire Kikuyu community. Yeah? We're talking about individuals. Yeah, so you cannot label a whole community based on what you think some individuals did, and this is where it's wrong. Yeah, and then naturally, our Kikuyu brethren have been very defensive, over defensive, and very sensitive, and you can't blame them, as we have seen from the past of persecution, and that is where a big problem in Kenyan politics comes from to this day. Yeah, we're a nation in serious trouble, very serious trouble. In part 2 of this recording, I shall attempt to give you a possible solution to this problem. So catch it, you know what to do. Click on the link on the top left hand corner of your screen right now, and let's see you there. Let's just get to the bottom of this. Yeah, however sensitive it is, let's just call a spade a spade. Let's get to the bottom of it. See you in a little while.